Every crime scene hides a truth, but some truths bury themselves so deep that even time refuses to reveal them. For more than a century, humanity has witnessed crimes that didn't just shock the world. They rewrote the very meaning of fear. These cases weren't simply murders. They were puzzles wrapped in shadows, leaving behind trails that led everywhere. And nowhere. Even today, investigators, historians, and cold case experts return to these files, hoping to find that one missing piece. Our first stop takes us back to London, 1888, where the fog carried more than just the smell of coal smoke. It carried rumors of a phantom killer stalking the narrow alleys of Whitechapel. But this retelling isn't the one you've heard before. New details and modern theories reveal a darker, far more disturbing pattern beneath the killings. Marianne Nichols was the first to be discovered, her body lying in a dimly lit street called Bucks Row. But what newspapers didn't print at the time was how unnaturally calm the scene was. There was no blood spatter on the walls, no frantic drag marks. Investigators quietly noted that the mutilations looked almost surgical, yet the cuts were inconsistent, as if the killer was learning, evolving. A week later, Annie Chapman became the next victim. This time, the killer escalated. Not only did he mutilate her abdomen, but something else caught detectives' attention. A folded piece of leather placed beside her body, too neatly, too intentionally. Some believed it belonged to the killer. Others believed it was a message. By autumn, 5 women had been brutally murdered, each attack becoming more confident and more precise. The name Jack the Ripper stuck after anonymous letters reached London newsrooms written in red ink, taunting police to catch him. But here's where the mystery deepens. Modern analysis suggests these letters were not from the killer, but from a journalist trying to sell papers, meaning the real killer. He never spoke. Not once. More than 135 years later, historians propose an unsettling theory. Jack wasn't a butcher, nor a doctor, but an attentive observer, someone who knew the victim's routines, the blind spots of the streets, and the exact moments when silence swallowed Whitechapel whole. Yet, despite the investigations, the autopsies, the suspects from all social classes, the killer was never found. And the more we learned, the less sense the murders made. It was something pale, lying in the grass, catching the early sunlight. At first, she thought it was just a discarded store mannequin, broken in two. But as she stepped closer, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a mannequin at all. It was woman. Her body was posed in a strange, deliberate way, almost as if someone had taken their time placing her there for the world to see. Her story became a Hollywood legend, a tale of a hopeful actress meeting a tragic end. Elizabeth wasn't just another aspiring starlet lost in the noise of post-war Hollywood. Years after the case went cold, quietly stored letters and old personal notes painted a different picture. She had been moving between social groups that were far more secretive than the newspapers ever reported. We're talking about underground social circles, former military men dealing with deep personal struggles, and even a doctor who was rumored to have stepped away from his profession under very unusual circumstances. The original investigators quickly realized something deeply unsettling. This wasn't a random, frenzied attack. It was deliberate, calculated. The way her body had been placed, the shocking precision of the cuts, the strange symbolism, it all suggested someone was trying to send a message. But it was a message without a key, a puzzle without a solution. The police were left grasping in shadows. They questioned dozens of people. Suspects came and went. Some gave confusing, contradictory stories. Others, sensing the heat, tried to draw attention to themselves with false confessions, muddying the waters even further. The investigation grew so tangled that important evidence was swallowed by mountains of paperwork, misfiled reports, and different police departments that stopped communicating with each other. The trail went cold, and the Black Dahlia case became America's most famous, unsolved mystery. But here's where it gets even stranger. When modern investigators and criminal profilers look back at the case files, they notice what the 1940s police missed. Everything about the crime screamed planning, control, and a disturbing level of anatomical knowledge. One theoria that still chills experts. Today, the person behind the Black Dahlia case was trying to hide it all. In fact, he may have wanted people to see the intricate, horrifying mystery he had created. He wanted them to be mesmerized by the puzzle, but never understand the reason behind it. And after that one cold winter morning, he simply vanished from history, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. The city of Los Angeles struggled with the silence and the paranoia left in the killer's wake. But while the Black Dahlia case faded into a dark legend, another, very different presence was rising on the West Coast. This was someone who didn't hide in the shadows. Someone who didn't just want to send a message, he wanted to be known. He wanted the world. Northern California. A quiet road, a parked car, and 2 teenagers murdered without any warning. It was a terrible tragedy, but at the time, not entirely out of the ordinary. But then, 7 months later, it happened again. Another parked car, another couple attacked. This time, there was a survivor, and she described a stocky man with glasses. Then came the letters. 3 different newspapers received almost identical envelopes. Inside each one was a message written in a strange cipher and a truly chilling declaration. I like killing people because it has so much fun. The letters were signed with a circle and a cross, and the writer gave himself a name: the Zodiac. Now, what most documentaries don't tell you is just how strategic the Zodiac was. This wasn't random chaos. He paid close attention to newspaper layouts. He studied police response times, and he watched the public panic like he was taking detailed notes for a class project. His codes were so complex that some took decades to solve, while others remain a complete mystery to this day. In one letter, he claimed he'd killed 37 people. In another, he threatened to start shooting schoolchildren as they got off a bus. The terror was real, but the truth was murky. Police could only officially confirm a handful of victims. The line between the Zodiac's twisted fiction and the brutal reality was heavily blurred, and it's very possible he did that on purpose. This has led to a fascinating new theory. What if the Zodiac wasn't just one person? The handwriting in the letters varied. The patterns of the attacks shifted. Even the vocabulary changed from one letter to the next. It's possible that the Zodiac persona was adopted by more than one individual, a shared identity for murder that would make the case nearly impossible to close. But while America was grappling with its coded bogeyman, a completely different, and somehow even more personal, tragedy was quietly unfolding in Colorado. December 26, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. It starts with a ransom note, a frantic 911 call, and a 6-year-old child, JonBenét Ramsey, missing from her bed. Police arrived at the sprawling Ramsey home, expecting a kidnapping scenario. What they walked into was a labyrinth of contradictions that would baffle investigators for decades. The ransom note itself was a major red flag. It was incredibly long, 3-hole pages, filled with oddly specific movie quotes. Stranger still, it was written on a notepad found inside the house, with a pen from the house, and the amount demanded, $118,000, was the exact amount of Mr. Ramsey's recent work bonus. It felt... ... staged. Hours ticked by. The search was chaotic. Then, in the afternoon, JonBenét's own father, John Ramsey, found her, not in the hands of a kidnapper, but in the basement of their own home. The scene was horrifying. She had been struck on the head, strangled, and her hands were bound with a cord, but it was done loosely, almost symbolically. The media latched onto the story, turning the investigation into a national spectacle. Every detail of the Ramsey family's life was scrutinized, twisted, and broadcast to the world. JonBenét, a child beauty pageant contestant, became a caricature in the headlines. But lost beneath all the noise were several disturbing details that are rarely discussed. There were no signs of a struggle in her bedroom. A basement window, a potential entry point, had been broken and left unrepaired for weeks. A neighbor reported hearing a metallic screech, followed by a scream on the night of the crime. And most bizarrely, investigators found 2 small marks on her body, consistent with a stun gun. The theories split into 2 main camps. Was this a terrible family tragedy? An accident covered up in a panic? Or did a cunning intruder slip into the house, commit this awful crime, and then vanish into the chaos they created? Modern forensic experts often point to evidence suggesting the killer knew the layout of the home intimately. The wine cellar where JonBenét was found wasn't a room you just stumble upon. Even people who visited the house often said they could get lost. Over the years, we've had fingerprints, unidentified DNA traces, handwriting analysis, and a mountain of theories. Yet, the case remains frozen in time. A chilling reminder that, sometimes, having too many clues can be just as confusing as having none at all. And yet, the world's most disturbing unsolved stories weren't done. Because in Germany, a remote farmhouse was about to reveal something truly unimaginable. Have you ever felt like you're being watched? Imagine hearing footsteps in your attic at night, but when you check, there's nothing there. This is exactly what happened to the Gruber family on their remote farmstead north of Munich in March 1922. A few days later, all 6 members of the family were found brutally murdered with a mattock, a common farming tool. The horror didn't end there. Investigators were chilled to discover that the killer had stayed on the farm for several days after the murders. They fed the livestock, ate food from the kitchen, and slept in the very beds of the people they had just killed. It was as if they were living among the dead, moving through rooms that still held the warmth of the victims. The family patriarch, Andreas Gruber, had told neighbors about the strange noises, and even a set of footprints in the snow leading from the woods to the farm, but none leading back. It was clear they had been watched, possibly 4 weeks, before the final, violent confrontation. Fast forward nearly 80 years to a quiet suburb in Japan. The Setagaya murders remained one of the most baffling cases in the country's history. An entire family, the Miyazawas, were found slain inside their own home. The intruder didn't just kill them and leave. He stayed for hours. He ate ice cream from their freezer, used their family computer to browse the internet, and even took a nap on their sofa. He left behind a mountain of evidence. His DNA, fingerprints, the clothes he was wearing, and even the murder weapon. You'd think a case with so much physical evidence would be solved in days. But despite a massive investigation and thousands of leads, no one has ever matched the evidence. The killer simply vanished, leaving behind a ghost-like profile that fits nobody. Then there's the mystery of the Isdal Woman, found in Norway, Isdal Valley, in 1970. Hikers stumbled upon the charred remains of a woman in a remote, rocky clearing. The scene was bizarre. All the labels from her clothes had been cut off. Her fingerprints were sanded away. She was found with multiple fake identities, several passports, and notes written in a complex code. The autopsy revealed a lethal dose of sleeping pills in her system, but also smoke in her lungs, meaning she was still alive, unconscious, when the fire was set. Was she a spy caught in the crossfire of the Cold War, or did she have a secret meeting in the valley that she was never meant to survive? Her true identity, and that of her killer, remains unknown. These cases are more than just unsolved crimes. They are chilling reminders of the darkest corners of human nature. They show us that even with clues, evidence, and modern technology, some mysteries seem impenetrable. As time marches on, the evidence remains. The stories are retold, but the killers stay invisible. It leaves us with an unsettling question. Why do some truths remain just out of reach? Perhaps the most terrifying answer is that some mysteries were never meant to be solved. Thanks for watching, and if you're fascinated by the unknown, make sure to subscribe for more.